the most passionate, Your Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the President of the Republic, the state has announced for more than 9 years that it deals with the economic issue as it is the priorities issue governing its effect on the Egyptian citizens, as well as the effort of the state is targeting the well-being of the citizens, despite the indicators that are indicators that are necessary for the Egyptians to deal with. Before the 2014, the national economy was suffering from structural challenges as the state announced since the beginning not to deal traditionally, even if it did voluntarily to bear the old expenses. So the path of the reform of the economy, where the Egyptian citizens were the first hero. Yet what happened that the whole world lived under the pressure of the closures because of the repercussions of the COVID-19. Following 2 years, full closure and semi-closures and attacked by the current bloody conflict in Ukraine that described the violent economic earthquake that gave the national economy to deal clearly and strongly to contain such a shock. Just as considering the repercussions and the negative impact of the merging economy, yet the lack of clear horizons, the question is raised for the Egyptian citizens upon the future as well as the deal of the Egyptian state. Such a session is dedicated to talk about the reality of the Egyptian economy divided to the two parts. The first one to talk to Ms. Hala Said, the Minister of the Economy. Before we raising the questions and exploring the side of the Egyptian experiment, I'll call you upon to watch a short video for the Egyptian economy on where were we and what we are now. Throughout the years, Egypt was suffering the inability of achieving the growth rate to fulfill its needs and compensate the accelerating increase in population, as well as the impact of 2011 that led to casualties that reaches $450 million, and the reverse has decreased to 13 billion Egyptian in 2013. As well as the data of the balance sheet is stated in 2014 to 0.11 million Egyptian, and it was double, and the expense of exportation has reached to 500,000 that require untraditional ideas. So we're here to continue working. In 2014, the wheel has changed. The development wheel has started in every inch, started by control the terrorist turbulence. We are saying to have security vis-a-vis food and drinking in order to build the country or the homeland again. We laid out a comprehensive economic reform plan starting from the central bank and getting flexibility in the rate of the foreign currency, and in the meantime include the changes in financial policy to control its deficit of the balance, to restructure the subsidiaries in order to provide governmental services for the needed citizens. Code laws to protect competitiveness instead of establishing a company 10 measures in 20 days, followed the new legislation. Citizens can open a new firm in 1 day through only 2 measurements, and establishing the centers to serve the investors. On the ground, Egypt started intensive national mega projects that contributed to moving the wheel of economy. And the decreasing of inflation to more than 33% and reaching to less than 4% in 2019. One of the most successful factors that the Americans have achieved in the tourism sector after regaining deterioration for years that reached 30% in 2011. During 9 years, the size of investment in investment and activity sectors more than 15 billion Egyptian pound. The COVID-19 led to the dismantling and crippling of the mobilization and led to the casualties of the economy, which reached $8 billion. Of the crisis has increased and made burden and crippling of the supply chain, followed by the Ukrainian-Russian war. And the result that flows of inflation due to the increase of the price of the power, the expulsion bill has doubled and led to make very stringent measurements, and the government increased the pensions and the salaries to overcome the crisis, continuing to attract investments in measurements such as the golden license. And from May 2020, we made several measurements to pave or to improve the improvement of investment in order to ease the problems of investors, and established Egypt's fund for offers and nationalized the one window in the taxing system, and launching the initiative of supporting the industrial and agricultural sectors of an easy or a simple interest of 3%. That increased the rates of investment through Egypt. Net investment reached $63 billion. Egypt has moved in all pivots in the same time, that in believing that the story is not just built in plans and buildings, but it is the issue or the matter of a tale of a nation, a homeland. This was a part of telling the tale of Egypt, how that happened, how they been reaching this phase and exploring the future. I start with Dr. Hala Al Said. Before we start, you are talking as professional, and it's please talk to the targeting point. Dr. Hal talking about the extended challenges. No one can predict how to stop and how it come to an end. The dealing of the state about the development project given the consideration of such a pressure. In the name of Allah, Your Excellency, Mr. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, ladies and gentlemen,
يسعدني ويشرفني أعرض على حضراتكم دور وزارة التخطيط والتنمية الاقتصادية في تحقيق والمساهمة في جهود الدولة التنموية، وزي ما تفضلت حضرتك إيه الرؤية المستقبلية في ظل التحديات
the projecting vision of the ministry? The whole world has convened in 2015, laying out the agenda of sustainable development that contains 17 objectives in 2030, on top of which to eliminate poverty, hunger, reaching sustainable cities, clean energy, equality, job opportunities, and Egypt was in the lead to adopt such a development agenda, and you've already launched the national edition of the UN agenda early in 2016. Such agenda and vision I contributed as an expert. I wasn't an official, but it was a partnership vision joined by all the elements of the Egyptian society that had three main pivots: the economic and environmental dimensions. Such objectives agreed upon by the whole world. Nicely to say that the interior reporters this year in between 2015 and 2013 came in the goals of the sustainable development by saying that we are in need of a bailout plan due to the circumstances and challenges internationally, starting from COVID-19 and the Ukrainian war, Russian war. Only 12 were on the path, 38% never seen any progress, 50% of the objectives were off track. Here in Egypt, where were we for achieving this agenda? Egypt had reached in the 69.3, around 70 points of progressed 7 positions since 2018. In the first evaluation, we are ranked among the 26 countries throughout the world, and we are committed to achieve the sustainable development that are 17 objectives. Due to the efforts of the state in development, but we are documenting these efforts, whether in the reports such as the national report follow-up and report throughout the governorate, the human development report, and the competitive indicators of the governorate to be documented regionally and to be sent to the UN. And while we are laying out the sustainable development plan throughout 3 years, or the annual plan with the participation of the state institutions, we have a set of data and indicators that we are resorted to, whether they are local or internationally, from the relevant bodies. It is important by saying that we, among the dimensions, the economic, social dimensions, they are the main, as Egypt is committed of the right of development as the main right of the human rights. Therefore, achieving the social and economic part are very important. Therefore, we are talking about the social protection, the provision of health and learning, improving the infrastructure, the efficiency of the institutions, as well as the public services, and investing in the human element. In order to achieve these objectives, it was a must in this period and after being explored by His Excellency Mr. President following the situation in 2011 to intensify the public investment that increased from 110 billion to 1 trillion and 50 billion Egyptian pound in this year. These services, not only locally, have increased from 8.2 billion to 38 billion in this plan. Giving you example why we are committed to achieve these goals. We have in 2023 Egypt's vision in education, the availability and competitiveness in university education. So we are providing the availability by provision in 103 universities throughout each governorate. Therefore, we are achieving the availability and we are in the path of competitiveness. But the pre-university education, despite the big investment went through this year to establish 120,000 classes to contain 4.8. We've tried to achieve the 2030 Egypt's vision to achieve the place just 38% went to the Upper Egypt, and we've already achieved the 3,478 classes partially availability achieved. We never achieved to the targeted vision, 35 students per class, due to the increase of the population. But this would require a great amount of investment. We're talking about not less than 460 billion Egyptian pound during the upcoming years. Egypt's Vision 2030 is the biggest development program that targeting to nationalize the SMD goals. Due to the great success of a decent life program in Silent Africa for the climate change, to be a role model in the African continent. For the first time in Egypt, we've made a minimum wage for the private sector. I know that's not enough, but it is for the first time that the private sector, the civil societies, unions, to work with the government to put a minimum wage to protect our workers, yet that has a great balance by maintaining institutions, labor work, and the rights of the manpower. I thank the and appreciate private sector's patience for the serious negotiations in this field. To raise the efficacy of an institution is a great article, and we're talking about the making automation of the plan linked to the Ministry of Finance to follow up accurately of the investment. We launched a performance system as well as a database for the national accounts to work directly, automatically by gaining the GDP accurately and to develop it continuously. We've already automated in the health sector, the health officers, vaccination units. This is not only an information data or baseline to the Ministry of Planning, because I know the level of births in order to take my decision scientifically. We've also automated 350 technological centers throughout the Republic that provide 250 services to the public. This is the form before and after development. And now we have services to provide with the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, mobile services to reach the citizens at their door houses. We're targeting 1,000 mobile centers with the partnership with the private sector. We've launched the Egypt Prize of the Government Excellence to incentivize the spirit of competitiveness. Sometimes we may cast the light on some abuses or misuse, but we found several of successful elements that need encouragement. We've invested in the human, which is a part of, and a very important part of the Egypt vision. We've trained 120,000 trainees in several centers. So we have qualification training. These all to be done with the biggest local and international relevant bodies. The environmental dimension is a very important dimension of Egypt's Vision 2030, whether to confront the climate changes. 78% of our projects are directed to mitigate, of course, all the investments of the state made in the electrical transportation, the express train and the subway, generations, powers plant. 20% of the efforts were dedicated to the mitigations, in addition of the plant of desalination water. We've issued criteria of the environment sustainability by reaching 40% of our projection toward green. We're targeting to 50% of the upcoming year. As a result of the state's efforts before the Ukrainian-Russian war, we've achieved a 6.6 growth rate, and unemployment rate went to the minimum to 70%. As said in the video, 10 billion US. In light of the current challenges, we are facing unprecedented scientifically, meaning because of the crisis happens, we only not just have one crisis. We're talking about with the COVID-19, followed by the Ukrainian and Russian crisis, followed by the geopolitical crisis, as well as the climate changes, that the developing countries spending not less than 4% of their GDP only to minimize the crisis, not just to expend on the adaptation and mitigation that made great repercussions, such as the shortage of the provided goods, burdens of the or troubles in the supply chains that maximize the crisis that the USA, China, and Europe were 50% of the world economy. Therefore, that all they have that led to a very degradation in the growth rate as well as the world trade rate. In light of such challenges, that was a must to outlook the Egypt's Vision 2030 as a projecting vision that laid down with the participation of the civil society, academia, and the private sector. And such agendas, a vital document, need to be followed up to outlook the regional and international development, that to be more flexible against the economic shocks, that based on the information Therefore, I need to go through targeting the sustainable growth. We are targeting no less than 7 to 8%, but our growth from the 80s or not the 50s till now is taking the same diagram. It is importantly for any shock this growth gets affected by these shocks and have a great vague between the importations and export and import that required to look at its the structure. We looked at the labor market. In fact, we've achieved 7% unemployment, but we have problems. We still have the women unemployment for the women that is high, therefore the higher education as well as the unofficial economy sector, adding the future jobs that we're talking about, 83 million that are projected to be lost, that are lying the innovation skills and the monetary analysis. So we need to look at the employment structure. Among the moderation to targeting the partnerization of the private sector, we were, in order to achieve these services, entering to invest. As you can see, the public investment size. We're talking about investment for the private sector that reaches 36%, and we are targeting 65 in 23. The future we're projecting to look at the economic structure in Egypt, the efficacy of financing and the labor market, and to invest in human and to control the rates of the population increase. Of course, assisted by supported factors of the governance of the state. When we are talking about the production structure in Egypt, that require me to make the Egyptian economy to increase sectors of production that would give me an added value, that provide me job opportunities, that has linked ability of other sectors, increasing their percentage scales that reaches 30%. In addition to the tourism and logistic sectors that have competitive edge. And we also have policies and executive measurement, modification in legislation, such as increasing the SMEs from 10 to 20% in exportation, as well as to increase the technological component, and the food security sector need to be improved in Egypt. All effort to be taken, as well as some modification of laws, such as the agricultural laws, etc. IT sector, as a result of demographic chance or opportunity, in reaching $9 billion in the outsourcing sector, and of course that has a great role in creating job opportunities. And the benefit of the competitive edge to have Egypt as a pathway of the world trade, to be linked with the industrial zone, to make Egypt a hub for the world trade. The outlook regarding of the labor market, as we always talking that we are having a gap, but today we're talking about the treatment of the side of offer in the labor market by increasing who are joining to professional or technical education into 65%. I had a challenge which is the societal image.
الدولي إن
Therefore, we need to
فبيضمنوا فرص عمل بالنسبة لهم. أطلقنا
adopt
منصة المهارات
or
القطاعية تحت مظلة المجلس القومي للأجور
to have some sort of accreditation to this kind of education.
الدراسات المشتركة على مستوى الجامعات، لأن دي اللي سوق العمل الديناميكي النهارده محتاجها. To
continue the investment of the human capital with the increase of population, Egypt has jumped as a result of the past effort. It's not actually a domestic report, but it is UN report that jumped 19 ranks in the human development, despite deterioration throughout the world. But it requires that need to be doubled investment, health, and to get benefit of the futures of population. In the meantime, we've launched the national project of developing the Egyptian family, that it is integrated with the national strategy of population, and also to affirm or in the investment of the human capital that is collaborated by the national and state institutions. Certainly, the Egyptian women that had an unprecedented political empowerment, but economically regarding or given with regard to the economic that would increase the GDP to 34%. The private sector, and of course, as projected by His Excellency Mr. President, made several measurements for the private sector, such as modifying some legislation and increasing the competitive edge. Such a fund is an investment arm of the Egyptian state, launched in a decree of 2018. Its role is to create opportunities for the upcoming generation and contribute on the policy of the state ownership. Who's to control the work of such a fund? In fact, the social media is talking that it is a closed fund, uncontrollable, which is not true. It is controlled by the Central Center of Accounting according to the law. Also, it is controlled and observed by the accredited observers of the Central Bank and the National Authority of Financing, presided by Mr. Premier, as well as the Minister of, or the Governor of the Central Bank, and some experts of economy and laws that we are proud of them, that form the General Assembly. If I'm not actually implying the criteria of the international governance, therefore it is a member of the International Forum of the Sovereign Fund. According to Egypt's Vision 2030, established a set of affiliated funds to the tourism, health services, financial and digital transformation, and another fund for restructuring the offers. What we are doing, according to the state vision, so one, we maximize the state assets that are untapped, and efforts to nationalize the Egyptian industries. We entering to support the emerging firms and corporations. An example, to develop the Al Tahrir complex that been offered competitively, received an international ally of world corporations to be a place for multiple services. Also, another land that was deserted, which is the to be a complex for schools, to be inaugurated by His Excellency Mr. President in the week to come. With the participation of the Ministry of Transportation as a result of the great investment made in the infrastructure to have a very appropriate public services transportation, it was important to nationalize such a sector with the partnership of the private sector. And today, this type of factors of very intensive work that gave or provide an added value. We've nationalized this type of industries to produce the vehicles or the train cars, and we attributed with the participation of the private sector to transform Egypt as a regional hub of energy with the Ministry of Petroleum and Power. We've already established the first plant of producing green ammonia, and you've already integrated in COP27, and we contributed in a set of projects to produce the green hydrogen. We are entering to offer 21 desalination plant for water. We supported the emerging company. We've established a company for SME to support the emerging companies, and we contribute with a small one of the private sector, which is agriculture company that directs its activity for exportation. The affiliated fund for offers, in order to do so, the offer that in fact has more than one form, an offer for administration or position or to increase the capital. These forms, before I do so, do we offer or not? If we offer, we are attacked that you've already given away one of your assets, and if we're not, we'll blame the government for leaving it like that. It was a decision, it was your decision, based on executing the state ownership document that resulted from a national dialogue conference made by the Egyptian people. So its benefits, they offer benefits, firstly, to add new expertise that are very distinguished, and for such firms, increasing the governance, open new markets for some of these corporations and attract a direct foreign investment. All these features in order to expand our companies, open new markets, entering capital, getting or bringing developed capitals to gain more. Giving you two examples without names, I have a model in the financial sector. This company is achieving capitals of 870 million Egyptian pound. 3 years later, such a company is achieving 950 million Egyptian pound as profit. Another model of the transformation, of digital transformation, a part of it to be owned, its market value has increased 35. Its profit has doubled to 100%. I had a letter from them yesterday by saying that today you are going to open markets in the African and Arab countries. I'm maximizing my entities that would ultimately benefit the national economy and the Egyptian citizen. As a proof for the fund, we've achieved 16 projects during the past 3 years, despite it was established in a time of the world investment is decreasing. We've attracted 48 billion Egyptian pound of investment and 5.7 billion as investment. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, ma'am. Minister, I'm sitting next to you. I don't know if you've heard my heart beats. I consider that Ma'am Minister Hala is an exception. The pressure against the balance the public sheet or the public budget, that is, you're surprised of the prices of the petrol oil barrel. In addition of the how the state is dealing with such pressures that the ministry is facing? Peace be upon you all, Your Excellency, Mr. President Abdel Fattah Sisi is the President of the Republic. Allow me, before I start my presentation, to talk about a part that may explain the presentation. The period from 2011 to 2023 can be divided to 4 phases. 2013, 2014. I think 2 things have said in this period that affected the economic and financial situation of the Egyptian state through all the indicators being laid. Thank God. 2013, the 30th of June, moved us to a different phase. The challenge of 2013 to 2016, such a period, all the economic indicators continue to suffer, and the negative impact of what happened in 2011 to 2013, inflation, unemployment, and the decreasing of the growth rate. But it takes time. In 2013 to 2014, there were some grants from our brothers, yet the economy wasn't capable to launch until 2016. You've already mentioned what happened in 2016, the necessity of the economic reform that wasn't easy. Most was very reluctant about such a reform. In a meeting that gathered all the relevant officials, talked about the necessity of making the economic reform. Once again, in November 2016, you said that you would take the decision because it had to take the resolution. And you took the resolution, and you hoped from the Almighty God as the Egyptian people to be the situation, and it was the past to suffer. In fact, it happened. We started to move, to notice its impact, growth rates, the decrease of unemployment, inflation, stability of the currency, and stability in the good prices. And the whole world started to talk about Egypt. Egypt was a bright star, in a word of the governor of the International Bank, in the field of the economic reform. As all indexes going in the past that Egypt is compensating what happened in 2011 until the pandemic came in 2021, and I remember you've requested to have a meeting for the economic group by saying that the whole world is closing, airports, plants, and it was a feeling among us, all of us, that you all were worried of what happened, of what achieved of the economic reform. And you're wondering, would it have an impact due to the pandemic? That was the question for everyone to say his or her vision. Some of us said to start to do the closure, as the world said, and give the people money. Some said we couldn't do this. We've already passed the crisis in 2019 as the crisis, or 18, the emerging market affected us, but we had a state of economic strong that actually overcome such a crisis. And we've mentioned the crisis that affected the tourism sector, and the resolution was to close partially in order to deal with the pandemic and its impact. You said to inflow in a societal package of 150 billion, and the closed sectors, you said to support them. We've lost 400 billion Egyptian pounds, and the focus was on the health to deal with the impact of the pandemic. But I remember when you asked me, does the public finance sheet to the ministry to bear for how long? I said it was only 1 year. We didn't know that people would inflow billions and trillions as a liquidity despite everything were closed. We never knew that the oil companies and transportation, if they had casualties that would require to be compensated. Due to the turbulence of the supply chains, would make a new inflation wave. As a result, the money to be transferred from the emerging market to the other markets of high interest, and to the 54 African country, their currency were dropped. We never knew that the oil prices to reach one day of $144 per barrel, as well as the tin of wheat of $240 per 1 ton. We never knew that another war would be waged. But what happened? We were hoping that the COVID-19 to be ended and to recover and then to continue again. And then Mr. President asked us, what can we do, what we could have done? And you said not to close because it's the people's income. We continued. We've lost 400 billion. We'll spend more than 200 billion. We flowed more time to make the flanks to be open in order to operate. And that the competition never came. Instead of, we got the barrel of oil is 120, and we getting the 10 million of wheat used to buy 250 instead of 500, and then to find that the money left from the emerging market around 23 billion US dollar within only a few weeks. That impressed us in providing more money to get the things in double price. That put the level of the Egyptian life as well as the Egyptian pound under pressure. I tried to answer that we were imagined to suffer only for 1 year only. We never knew that we've started their negative impact, trying to explain the figures, trying to say that people said to increase the rates of interest that damaged all the emerging and developing countries, that they required the financing. They weren't able to, they were affected by the COVID-19. They had to borrow and get loans to continue. All had a level of debt, and I said the alternative to stop the project. We continued. The Egyptian citizen appreciated or valued that these, within 2 years of the crisis, they never felt an increase of the prices in the goods, because Mr. President said, just take into your account that you may have troubles due to the COVID. But the crisis had extended, Mr. President, from 5 April 2020, that we felt how you worried about what we've achieved of economic success and what would have happened if it continued. It continued, and its negative impact had increased. I tried just to explain, to be at the whole, that such explanation spread over there, here or there, aren't true. I move on to explain the figures. Throughout 43 years, expenditures and our incomes, not to mention or deviate the inflation, you always see on red, these are expenses on top, and below is the incomes since 1981. This gap is the deficit that is available every year and to be added in the debt. As you spend more than you get. It's not only from today. Maybe today you are expending because you are making infrastructure, but there you were expending more because of the subsidies. To remind my minister that this diagram is nearly touched when the establishment of the National Investment Bank. So we had only the current budget that makes this surplus actually to be added. So this is a deficit to be added every year on the debt. I'm not taking the part of the results of the national or the economic reform. In the middle is high, and it's in the middle is high. If I look to the next one, during the 43 years, we had only these 5 years due to the Gulf War, then were lifted in the grants, so the deficit was degraded. But if we succeeded this year, we had a deficit that would range from 8.1 or 8.5. These are the minimum years of deficit, excluded the years of the war Gulf. The most years that reach 13.8, 81, and 12.5 to 2015, 2016. 2013 was 12.9. The deficit went down along with the economic reform to 9.1 to 6.8, and the 30th of June the past were 6%. Despite the COVID-19, we've ended closed the deficit to 6%. It excluded the period of the Gulf War. Now we are affected because of the rates are high locally and internationally, but affected the total deficit. But we have a plan to contain this period from 23 to 24 to go down, so we'll in reaching 3.7%. As indicated internationally, to have an acceptable deficit. In brief, throughout 43 years, Egypt achieving with regard to the primary deficit. And I read someone you've already invented primary deficit, or the whole world is acknowledge actually the primary deficit that is measuring the state ability to cover their expenses that actually increase or that is more than in their import. When you talk about the classification entities or institutions, to look at the primary, if you have your income to be increased, then you expend and leave the deficit aside. Regardless of the Gulf War, Egypt never witnessed but the primary deficit that had not enough income to cover their expenses. So the exceptions in the 80s and the impact of the debt annulment, we'll find in 2013 to continue the primary deficit is 5%. That lasted to 2017. That was the first time to have a surplus as a moderate one. Since then, we're making a primary surplus amidst the crisis, though. That's the public ability that is capable to create sources that cover its expenses. We are about to make it 2.5%. This is the image, Your Excellency. It's reflecting the situation started 2013. The above is the total deficit, and the lower one without the rates or the deficit primary that till we started the economic reform. So if we look at the one in between, we have the period of loaning, and God willing to continue to degrade the primary deficit. Some would say that it took me also 43 years to the level of the debts. The list years was the fiscal year 28 or 2008-2007, and 2000 was 80, and also to 2008 and 2009. The average is around 100, and the highest years of debts from 80s to 83 that reach 159%. So where are we? Our debt was, the highest point was 108%. Once we started the economic reform, reached to 80.9 on the 30th of June in 2020. Despite this quarter witnessed the COVID-19, we should be lower than 80, the best levels through these years. But unfortunately, we've closed from March till June. More expenditure, 200 billion. We've decided to continue expansion. So the impact affected the debt to be increased due to the situation I explained. In 30th of June 21, 84 and 287, and the 30th of June 23 ended 75.7. This debt never affected, because of the turbulence, affected the fiscal or the public or the balance sheet. But why it has increased? The change of the currency, because I had the debt, a part of the Egyptian currency and another part of the US dollar. 82 from the abroad and the 28 from inside. If you change the price, £1 would change 110 billion US dollar in debt. That increased the debt currently to 1.8 trillion. So this increase is not the troubles of the public sheet due to the change of the currency. Yet 23, 24 to increase to 91.3 to reach 75% in the next year or the following year. We used to listen and repeat that the balance sheet is 4 quarters. 1 quarter for the wages, and subsidies, interest, and the operating, which is the deficit. Such a structure had changed by time because we started to minimize the subsidy, started to go to increase in investment, social protection, takaful and karama, and the health initiatives. So the structure had changed, started to change. In orange are the assets. We were 16 or 13%, and now we're talking about 22%. The only thing that affected negatively were the interest, part of it as a result of the currency or the change. Another part related to the rates that been doubled. Instead of 26% for the supplies, that actually affected along with the interest. In the green color was the subsidies of the oil materials that took the biggest part of the subsidy against the petroleum products. we took, in return, the subsidies of the pension funds had increased strongly due to the reform. I wish to say something. We used to say that of the issue of the pension that actually threats the balance sheet of the country. Total of being transferred to pension is about 1.3 trillion upon the day of the economic reform, to cross 900 billion, and we are ready to transform the funds to be transferred to 3.1 trillion. So, to make this sustainability of the pension funds, we've cancelled the idea of that the company or the state taking the pension monies to continue. And the Takaful Karama project in 2024 to be 5.2 million family, by increasing of 35 billion Egyptian pound. We're talking about reaching the minimum. Instead of 1,200, we're talking about 4,000. The increasing of the taxing exemption, what I wish to say, we made great reforms that were radical, and I think that the health, the comprehensive health insurance to decrease the poverty and to deal radically with one of the most important factors of threatening the people's health. I wish to say that this year we are allocating 2.2 billion Egyptian pound to support the incapable. We made a great reforms in taxing, in managing the financial administration of the state. The last thing, in 2015, we were exploring before you the balance sheet, the GFIS, to manage the system electronically, and you advised us to do. I told you that requires 3 to 4 years. You replied to be done within 1 year, and we worked, and we've closed 61,000 accounts, and the paper checks were cancelled. All these systems that were in the Ministry of Taxing, and the paths to continue. Challenges are strong, but Egypt is capable, and this is a tale of nation that started from years, but we are capable and we will continue. Thank you, Mr. To end in this session, the Honorable Minister explored where were we and what we are now. And if you have any intervention, Mr. President, please give me the slide that shows the expenditures and the resources of the state. I think the first or the second slides. The prayer one. Just I intervene here. We used to say why we were like that, why we were having difficult
هو لما احنا بنطرحها بنقول من سنه 80
circumstances. We used, or once we mentioned from the 80s till now, it's not the goal is to defend ourselves or to just laying out the reality, just to say the reality or to say the tale, not just to make a story, but we are mentioning it because it's time to end of it.
لما هي دوله
If it is a state since the 80s till now,
دايما عندها
had always
يعني ايه ايراد ويعني ايه مصروف ببساطه الدكتور ما يتكلم في حاجات كتير قوي
it's simply
تكون يعني
that
يعني
to say that the economists or the relevant officials can understand easily, but for the simple citizen, I say simply, our income is the income of Egypt as well. It's not as much as we spend. Since when?
هقول لكم على حاجه
I tell you something. Egypt never borrowed till the 70s.
لم يكن عليها ديون لغايه سنه
They had no debts till the 70s, but the repercussions of the war that imposed to Egypt in order to overcome the repercussions of the war in the 1973, for the state to get
وده بدايه الدين من سنه
the imports by using the dates, i.e. that it was a status quo or reality from the 50s till the 70s, and that changed starting from the 70s. It is important for the Egyptian to know, as it is our country, our homeland, and we wish to see it in a place
مش مشكله
to deserve.
تقبله
It is not a problem, but the issue is to accept it.
انك انت ما تبقاش
The
مستعد
issue that you're not prepared to fight for, to put an end for it. If you are, or even for
عشان بس
the people before us,
دايما
have they tried? Yes, of course they have tried.
لان الناس اللي كانوا موجودين قبل مننا على مدار من 80
Through the 80s, you are Egyptians and well educated, but it might be because due to the size of challenge that was very big. I wish to say that several may say that President al-Sadat made the 73 war and do not appreciate it, that affected the ability of the Egyptian state, and it was difficult to live
لان الدعم المطلوب
like that, even if there was a subsidy,
مش الانفاق العسكري بس
because that it's not only due to the military expansion
توقفت من 67
and that has stopped from the 70 or the expansion due to the investment
بالتالي انا عايز
since the 73,
في اللي قاله الدكتور معاذ
and the people were increasing. Therefore, this is the state of
وانفاقنا ده
the state or the nation, and this is our expenditure. A part of it, how could we do it? It was necessarily to increase our resources. Minister Dr. Hala were talking about the increase of population, despite the attempts being taken since the 50s, and we never succeeded.
وجينا ايام رئيس مبارك وما نجحناش وحتى الان احنا
Until now, we never achieved the required rate. And I say to you, imagine since 2011
نمونا
till now, the population growth would
ثابت
be
يعني صفر في دول كده طبعا
nil,
في دول
zero.
هو ثابت وفي دول سلبي يعني اقل كمان انا بقول
And
لو إحنا
some
كنا
people
ثابت،
would
الوفيات
have
قد المواد.
the same rate or negative. If you're talking about 20 to 25 million had increased since 2011, am I saying something reasonable? Yes, 25 million
احنا
exactly.
اساسا
the birth rate, basically,
الخطين عمرهم
the
ما
two
قربوا من
lines
بعض.
never approached each others.
فتصور بقى إنك
Imagine
انت في 2011
in 2011 you're losing 450
$450 مليار دول لما
billion
توصلهم
US dollar
تأثير.
as if they have
ملهمش ايه؟
no effect or no
تأثير.
impact.
لا.
No.
كل أزمة هتعملها أو هتتعمل
Any
فيك
crisis
هيبقى ليها
you'd
تداعيات.
face would have
وأنا بقول الكلام ده مش ليا
repercussions. I'm not saying
ولا
this
حتى
to
للمسؤولين
myself
المهمين.
nor to
أنا
the
بقول كل إنسان
officials.
مصري بسيط
I
ماشي في الشارع.
say to
اوعى تفتكر
every
2011
single or
2013
every Egyptian
450
citizen,
مليار دولار
don't you
دول
say
هتدوهم
that
لنا.
uh, these 450 million US dollars,
تدفع ثمنهم
someone give it to us? No,
من
the
لحم
state
لحم اليد.
pay the price from
وانت
the
كمواطن
alive
عايز
person.
تعيش
As
وانا معاك.
you, as a citizen, you
وعايز
wish to
تربي
live, and I
اولادك
agree
وانا
with you, and
او احنا
you
جنبك.
wish to
وعايز
raise your
تشغلهم.
kids, and I'm
وده حقك برضه.
beside you,
بس بقى
and you
هنعمل
wish
ده ازاي؟
to find them
إذا ما كناش
places to
نفهم
work, and I'm with you.
حكاية ليه
But
بلدنا طول عمرها
we
كده.
should
43 سنة.
understand the story that Egypt throughout the
لازم نخرج
40s like that.
ولا
If you
نقعد
wish to
نضحك على بعضنا ونقول كلام
get out of it or to overcome,
بصراحة. الدكتور بيقول
frankly,
الناس جت في
doctors
كوفيد
said that people in COVID-19 from the end of the 19 and the closure started from March till 2021. Upon that time, 5 million Egyptian citizens were working. So I sat with educated, specialized people. Of course, Egypt is full of them, but our colleagues in the universities, scholars, they had communicated with their peers. If someone in the field of economy, of course, would have talking to Dr. Hala or Dr. Ma'id to give their point of views, and we accept them as long as they are scientific and logical. If we, back to the point of 25 million, how would have done incentives in economy to so that would reach the number 600? Did you get this figure from? Once more, in 2014, someone told me you are Egypt's icon. Why you are in this country? You are the hero. Don't you join them? Otherwise, you will be devastated. I said, if the price is my death, I would take the chance, my chance. Just remind Dr. Ma'id in 2014, the first increase in minimizing the subsidies of the oil was in 2014. People were talking, why did he do so? I'm not doing this to myself. Don't you ever think so? I'm not just offering myself to you. This is inappropriate.
فأنا حبيت بس أتوقف قدام الخط ده. طب ما قربش من بعضه ليه؟
So why these two numbers never approached each other? We never had an opportunity to have an equal. It is the deficit is always Firstly,
14
before 2014, there was for the people just to eat only, even if we don't have
يفتكروا ان الدوله اللي هم كانوا
the
عايشين فيها.
potential of the state.
طب ننطلق ازاي
So
ل 105 و110
how
و150
would
خلال
be
20 سنه؟
moving to 110 and 15 during 20 years, 25 in 10 years. If I say 20 years, we will be 160 million. So are we prepared for this number? I won't be here.
لكن انتوا موجودين
But you
وابنائكم
will
وأحفادكم
be
موجودين.
there, your son, your grandsons, and some would pay
في حد لازم يضحي عشان الكلام ده
and
ينتهي.
sacrifice to have an end of
مين؟
this state.
مين يدفع؟
Who would pay?
مين يدفع؟ هقول لكم مين يدفع.
I tell you who.
ممكن نتسائل قوي اكتر من كده على اخواتنا ونقول لهم ايه. يلا
We could, we may actually be more
ما يصحش.
greedy to ask from our brothers to assist us again, but it's not inappropriate. If you don't wish to assist yourself,
عشان تغير بتاعها.
so
عايز الاخ
try to change your status.
وتقول انا جبت يعني كان ممكن قوي نقعد نتكلم في
Was-
الموضوع بس
it was
وعشان كده قلت لكم ايه.
were possible just to talk about this and only. If I say 2011 and 2013, why?
الاخرين
To tell you that the others who wish to preside a state and destroy it,
لا 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 استنى. عايز احكم بلد.
who would wish to lead a state or a nation in 2011 to destroy it and then lead it in 2012?
انا كنت
I used to say,
اللي احنا فيه ده البلد بتروح ما حدش هيعرف يصلحها.
no one's going to fix it if it is going to happen every day.
يعملوا في بلدنا ده.
We shouldn't do this to our country. The 38 billion is the
الانفس على 90 91
from 1991 till the time of the revolution. We always scheduled and in 1 year and a half buying the whole and it will be this since I took the office, I just had any sign to be greater going to with the stability, just find the effort to others would
نهدها على اصحابها.
some would wish to destroy it. You won't be able to do anything better. If you've had this in 2011, you were in a mess.
لا عارف تجيب بنزين ولا عارف تجيب قمح.
You weren't able to get oil
من غير
or wheat, and you said it's this conspiracy. No, the conspiracy was your ignorance.
اسمعوا انا دايما بستفيد.
Listen, I was always to get benefit of such gathering, to say to the people on the street, and not the scholars or the academia,
لكن انا يهمني
but it is important for the person, the
واللي قالوا
moderate, simple citizen,
طب انا هتكلم
to have an eye on it. And what's mentioned about the pension, just to tell you that there is a solution to the issue of pension, there is a big
لا يتناسب مع المعايير
subsidy that not to go in parallel with the criteria that the idea of pension were built upon. Agree with me?
انا عايز اقول لكم
Let me
إن
just
كافة الفلوس اللي بتاخد
continue.
من المعاشات رقم
The number of the pension is just a figure. If I wish to tackle this figure as an economic intellectual, if I see this, the number is fixed in its place in the banks,
المتوسطة 10%
plus the rates, its average were
طب احنا الموضوع ده قعد كام سنة
10%. Lasted for how many years?
الدكتور الوزير المالية اللي خد الرقم
Ministry of Finance started the transfer the interest of the pensions. When did he take the number? In 2005. If I had the 10% of 600 billion, would be 1 trillion,
10% ضعف الرقم بعد 10 سنين
to be doubled after 10 years.
مش كده؟ طيب حد قال
Did someone said that the system
وحجم
and the actual studies
الاموال اللي بيتم اخذها من الناس للمعاشات تساوي
would equal
المصروفه دي تحقق حتى
or to achieve,
مش مع الدوله مع
if this number with the state or the mentioned authority,
قول يا دكتور الرقم اللي احنا
say the number that would pay till 2250, 47 trillion. No, beg your pardon, 45 trillion.
عشان احنا قلنا ايه بقول لكم ايه لو دخلتوا بقى مع الناس في ديبيت
If you join
على ان احنا
the people in debate as the number been taken due to the deterioration of the
لا
performance
تتناسب مع الرقم
in the
ده
administrative
الدوله تشيل صح كده؟ مش قرار كده يا دكتور مصطفى؟
authority
القرار كام؟
is not
45 تريليون
going to do anything. You've already said 45 trillion Egyptian pound. Who's going to bear it is the state budget
50 سنه يعني
for 50 years.
نقول
As an average, 1 trillion a year, so you're taking 600 billion, so you pay trillion every year for 50 years, yes, because we've had a mistake as a state, and because we never said to the people that these figures
من الناس اللي هي
taken from the pension allocation do not are not appropriate with the number you take later. Some would give the minimum.
اللي انت هتدفعه في المعاش
What you are going to pay in the pension, am I going to give it back to you? It isn't one single issue. It's cost 45 trillion Egyptian pound,
لان في 11 مليون مش كده؟
whereas 11 million
مليون انسان ليه معاش او
beneficiary
فما نقدرش
have families who cannot
مش كده يا دكتور؟
put them aside.
لان بدون الدوله ما كانش ممكن
Without the intervention of the state, we wouldn't have to fulfill the commitment in paying the pension. If each point you've tackled, mentioned by my Minister Hala and Dr. Mait, to find a solution of each, you'd see or hear the wonders. In order to fix the paths of
مسار صعب قوي
or a track that is very hard to tackle, a path of undeveloped countries, the path of policies that targeting
على طول يعني
to be on that chair forever.
احنا اللي احنا بنعمله
No,
ما سابش مع السياسات دي خالص
what we are doing is not actually appropriate with what we are doing, or this or such policies. The issue of running the country is much bigger.
دولة ناجحة ولا دولة
Are we targeting a successful country?
اللي بيربي
Whoever actually is raising 2 or 3 kids
بيعمل جمعيات. بتكلم على غالبية الناس.
is actually making clubs for gaining money
عايزين تبنوا
or saving money if you wish to build Egypt.
كده هو احنا
We should to have it like that.
دخلنا بينا فيها مغامرة واحدة
Have we entered any adventure with you?
دخلنا فيها بتعتبروا التنمية
Do you consider development as a conspiracy?
بتعتبروا البنى
Do you consider building is a conspiracy? Do you consider reform as a conspiracy?
ما تختزلوش القضية بتاعتنا
Didn't you
وما تفرجوش الناس علينا اصمدوا اصمدوا وحولوا
just struggle and transfer these hard circumstances to grant
زي ما عدت
and a gift as we've covered the COVID-19 and it's 2 years. And by the way,
في البيت 5 مليون يعني 25
used to say, am I going to close
25 إنسان يعني في الأسر دي
um, the house of 5 million as of 25 million citizens?
بيستدعي
I benefited the
دكتور هاني
talks being said.
احنا بنقول عنوان
When we talk about the population,
بنرددها كده برضو فقرة
the overpopulation, we're only just making it as a theme or a title, but its impacts are very dangerous. Today, once you get an overpopulation as such, Dr. Mustafa,
في فترة
it is not appropriate to talk about or mention some
بداية
countries by names.
المجاعة بتاع دولة معينة
He mentioned the
2050
natural crisis of a specific country in the 60s that
25 مليون
led the deaths or killing of 25 million
وعملوا البرنامج
and made
ضبط النمو السكاني من 68
the birth control program in the 60s
صح كده يا دكتور؟
and released
2017 بعد ما عملوا
the maternity in 2017
عملوا تنمية تحقق ليهم ان هم
and
واتحطت طبعا يعني بقت دولة عظمى
that became a great or one of the greatest countries.
هو تفتكروا لما دولة يموت منها 25 مليون من قلة الأكل
Don't you ever think that the 25th million who have died due to
لا ما قاموش يبنوها
lack of food,
قاموا يبنوها
they never wish to destroy it, but only raised up to build it that made it a great country.
دي الأفلام اللي تتعمل
These defense that should be made in order to educate whoever is going to talk and listen how to make
لا 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 كل
a
الخمس نماذج ولا الست
state
نماذج
or a country. All the 6 models mentioned by Dr. Madbouli resembling sacrifices Korea, North Korea, China,
في الناس بتعاني لا
not just due to the suffering, no,
الناس بتعمل وما بتاخدش حاجة
they work for free
دايما الدكتور محمد
as
علي الكلام بتاعه في الفلوس كل مرة يقول لك احنا والله المالية العامة كويسة جدا وانا شغال طول الوقت
I'm just remembering what has been said by Dr. Maid's word for mentioning figures in the Ministry of Finance. I imagine before that, I salute you, both of you ministers, and I
ده كان في حوار وطني كنت
wish you to
يعني
say this, and I wish you to
مساهمتكم في الكلام ده
have a bigger contribution and participation in the national dialogue,
وفيهم كلام من هذا القبيل ولهم رؤى ولهم آراء.
because our friends there, economists, that
أحمد كان بيقول كلام كويس قوي على
have their perspectives.
ازاي نحل المسألة
One of
واحد
them
اتنين ده. من كل من شارك معانا في الحوار الوطني
used to talk nice words about how to solve our problems. I never launched this initiative
مش مجاملة
from as an accompaniment, or
بجد.
we only just wanted to
بس
say,
فكان
to
فرصة ان احنا
talk to each
وعشان
other,
كده قلت
listen to
انتوا يا ريت
each
تكونوا دايما
other's.
موجودين معانا
Therefore, I
في كل
wish
مناسباتنا
to
وكده
have you
ويسمعوا.
both
لان
of
برضه
you
الاعلام
as
في التلفزيون مش
always.
كل حاجة والناس برضه ما تبقاش لكن انتوا قاعدين معانا تسمعوا الكلام ده تعرفوا
To listen to them and tell them
2013 عمل في بلدكم
the
ايه
story of
والجهل عمل في البلد ايه
2011,
الجهل
as well as the
والله كنت اقول لهم
ignorance.
يا جماعه البلد دي هتضيع كده
I used to
محدش
say,
يعمل في بلده كده
this
خلوا الناس انت تشوف
country
شغلها
going to be
تعينوا مليون ونص يا
devastated.
دكتور في
Let the people do their work, not
في
just
السنة
to
دي
hire
كذا وكذا.
1.5 million in the funds and the administrative body, and to increase the salaries from 40 to 80 billion.
بقى له 43 سنه
The indicators
في نفسنا يعملوا فيها كده
for 40 years,
وبعدين يقول لك احنا هنحكم بالله
and they answered by saying, we are going to rule by the law of the Almighty God. No one would do so if they actually know the Almighty God very well. Excuse us, Mr. President, to have a small
Ladies and gentlemen, that was the economic session as part of a Story of a Nation conference activities. The conference witnessed by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Earlier, the Story of a Nation between Vision and Achievements conference kicked off on Saturday in the new administrative capital under the auspices and presence of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, as well as a large number of representatives of Egyptian society with its various sectors, experts, specialists in all domains. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Planning Dr. Hala Saeed, and Minister of Finance Dr. Muhammad Ma'ith all addressed the attendees as the President discussed with them and in detail some of the important points which were tackled by them regarding the economic file of Egypt, particularly in the past 9 years. The President inaugurated the session or the conference, to be accurate, on Saturday morning, and the sessions are going to continue tackling a number of files. And the first sessions discussed the economic file with its importance and as a vital part of the discussions covered a number of issues which really worries the Egyptian citizen. The President was keen to admit that there are problems, and transparency is the key word here. The President is keen to discuss the situation and in detail with the citizens and with the top executives to tackle the achievements which were realized on the ground, and also the obstacles and problems on the way and how to manage them. Well, we are going to follow minute by minute all the activities of a Story of a Nation conference with